Picking up where we left off regarding the reflected ceiling plans. So I've gone through and added and completed my RCP for level 1 as well, just utilizing a standardized layout, and I'm sure yours will be optimized as you work through the working drawings class. But one thing that we haven't done yet is create a view template for the RCPs and then stick them on some sheets and then do some legends as well around what each item is. So what I've done is on ground floor, even though there is no view template, I have been going through one by one, going into visibility graphics, turning off whatever categories I do and don't want to see. So I don't see furniture here or furniture systems. I don't see reference planes. I've turned off my topography. I've turned off my site items. I've even turned off my elevation tags under annotation. Elevations are turned off as well, but I have left my section markers on like so for now. So this is how our RCPs currently look. So there is no view template associated to this, but what I will do is we can create a view template essentially from a view that we've optimized. So on level 1, I'm not about to go through visibility graphics and start this process all over again. What I am going to do is go back to I'm going to go back to my ground floor, and then I'm going to go up to view template, and create view template from the current view. So I'll click on that, and we can type in what that current view is. So let's just call this architectural RCP. Say okay, there it is there. There is the default reflected ceiling plan, but we're going to create our own called architectural RCP. Everything that is currently here is based upon what we've got in our view. There are a couple of things that we may want to edit at some point, such as like the underlay, but I might just leave all of that basically turned on as it's currently shown. So the scales are 1 to 100. The detail level is coarse because we don't need to see the construction of the wall types in an RCP. We just want to see the walls as basically just as big grey lines. The view range is currently left as is. I reckon what we're going to do is I'm going to untick that to include that, because the view range might be different between the ground floor and the first floor RCP. So we'll just leave that. That will not be included in this view template. And then the underlay as well. It's always set to look down. I'm going to untick that as well. So I'll explain what underlay means in a second. So I'll say okay, and that's now done. So I can go view template, apply the RCP, architectural RCP, click OK. That's now applied. Nothing would have changed, and so it shouldn't, because it's based upon this view. When I go to level 1, we can do the same thing again. So I'll zoom out. You see there's a lot of rubbish in this drawing already. View template, architectural RCP, OK, cleans up everything. We're good to go, including all the furniture that isn't plumbing related fixtures. So that is, so in terms of what we're seeing here, we're going to need to continue. We will continue to update these RCPs as the project goes along, because we'll be adding more detail to the model and we'll need to rectify as appropriate. This includes even like our floor plan, so our ground floor plan, our site plan will probably need to be amended. I can see all the switches are currently showing in us, even in our site plan. So we need to go through and clean that up as well. But we'll go through a little bit later and do a bit of a cull and a master cleanup of all our view templates. But again, it's worth the time investing in doing this, because when you go to your next project in this Revit file, all these view templates are going to be set up. Everything is going to be showing or not showing just as you need it to by default. So let's go back to the RCPs, and we'll go to level 1 because I think that shows better. So in the properties window on the right hand side, I've got this area here about halfway down is called underlay. So the base range underlay is showing us level 1. The top range is the ceiling level of level 1, and the orientation is to look down. If I change this base level to none, this is what it looks like. Now that essentially we're not looking down on the plan, we're just stuck at the ceiling, and we're looking up at the ceiling. Imagine we're sort of lying on the ground looking up at the ceiling. So when we're looking up at the ceiling, we wouldn't be able to see where toilets are, where bathroom vanities are, kitchen, where the kitchen is, stuff like this, or any important furniture that might be required. Even the staircase here is a good example. We want to see where these lights are associated to the staircase. So under underlay, I'm going to change this to level 1, and now that shows us some of that key furniture items there. Now it shows it in a grey tone, which is good in a way because you don't want it to take away from what you're showing in the RCP. It's just there really as a reference point for what you're looking for. And then you can choose to whether that looks up or down. So if it's look up, it looks slightly different because now you're looking back up at the ceiling, so you'll notice some of the information stays, but majority of it goes. But generally speaking, you always want to look down because essentially saying I want to look down, I basically want to reference the floor plan on my RCP as an example. Okay, so that's fine for now. We'll continue to, like I said, we'll continue to edit these as we go along, but because we now have an RCP template, we can always just click on here and then go into model categories and amend as we see appropriate, and we can work through that. Okay, so in terms of the items that are or aren't included in your RCP, you'll refine those in your working drawings class, and we'll refine that in this model as we go along. But for now, this is a strong start. And the other thing to take into account is since the last class, we've really filled the model out now with a bunch of just furniture, families and whatnot. So we've got some couches, TVs, just a square that denotes the coffee table. I've edited the dining table in here, which is fine for now. Kitchen, we're modeling today in this class. And then if we move up into level 1, I've just added some generic items like a couple of beds, a nursery area with some chairs, another bed, and the desk. But you can see all this is very helpful because we now have all our light switches are modeled throughout the project, all our PowerPoints are modeled. And again, when it comes to furniture, it does help. So you imagine in here, you've got a desk area. It probably makes sense that you might put another GPO behind that desk area. Even if it's not a desk and it's a kid's play area, chances are that this is how the room would be set out in some way. The bed would be up here somewhere and whatnot. So there is a purpose to putting in some furniture in your working drawings model because you may need to understand what's, what services you're going to need around some key furniture elements of your design. Alright, so let's take a look at sheets. So what I've done is I've got 2 sheets here, reflected ceiling plan for level 1 and the ground. And what I've done is I've just gone to my ground floor plan, and it's really, there's no sides to this. Inside of Revit, you do have the ability under the View tab, about 3/4 of the way across, you have this area called Sheet Composition, and you have a grid guide. You can turn that on, and you can create a new grid guide, say OK, and it essentially just turns it into like an engineering piece of paper, essentially. And these guides are sort of snappable, so you can take an area here. So I could take like the corner of this building and snap it into that corner of the grid, as an example. Now, it's okay. I don't tend to use this. I don't think I've ever really used this just because it's hard to know exactly which grid intersection I'm looking at. The way that I normally do it is actually far more primitive, but tends to work a lot better. So in the garage area, I'm currently just drawing on the sheet. I'm not in the view. I can still drag the view. I'm just on the sheet, and I've drawn 2 lines here. One at this point, one at this point of the garage. And I'll select both of them, and I go Control C. And then I go to either my level 1 floor plan, which I've got there. You can see those lines. Or I went to my RCP, and what I did, in fact, I'll just get rid of these 2 quickly, and I'll drag this over here. I go Modify, Paste, and paste a line to the same place, and there's those crosshairs there. So I know those crosshairs, the intersection just there, is the set out point of the garage. So I can just click on the drawing, go move, zoom right into that corner, just eyeball it, and it will snap to that intersection. And now I know when we print this to PDF and I flick through these pages, the plans are always going to be in the same place on the sheet, which is important, especially in a multi-story building. All right, so next up we're going to do, we'll worry about the composition of these sheets a little bit later. They're on there now, which is good enough. But we do want to have like an electrical schedule or electrical legend to put in our sheets. So we've gone through legends before with the door legend, the wall legend, and even the window schedule. So what we'll do is we're legend, new legend, and I'm just going to call this electrical fixtures. And the scale doesn't really matter, to be honest, because we'll just eyeball it on the sheet. So let's just start with, say, 1 to 10. Say, okay, it's a blank area. There's our electrical fixtures. In fact, I've got to make sure I name that in capitals. Okay, now this is not as hard as it may seem. I'm just going to start with drawing some detail lines and just a box like so, just so I get a rough idea of something. And then I'm going to come down to my families, and this is where it's important to know the families that we've been utilizing. So I know that my electrical devices, if I double click on that, there's my switch, and I've got the different types. Got a horizontal double, vertical single. Now these are the two I've been using. So I can just click and drag and put that over here. Vertical single, put that there. Okay, and then I'm going to change the scale to 1 to 100. Alright, there we are. And I'll just drag that up here. I'll drag that there. Okay, so back again, I am in 1 to 100. Alright, I'll get out of there. Now, lighting fixture. DL1 downlight. Click and drag. And just place that there on the sheet. What else did we have? We had electrical fixtures. We had GPOs. Electrical fixtures, there it is, GPO, click, and they're basically all double, so I'll click and drag that, and there's my little fixture. Now if any of these are the wrong way, which these three are, I can just rotate them on the spot. Actually no, I can't, because that's how the families are set out, which that's okay for now. That's fine for now. Okay, so let's go back to, we've got a couple of other items. So some of these, now these came from actual families. So we've got items, or I guess we have symbols that go with them. But there are other instances where we just drew them as is. Actually, sorry, there was one more that we're missing here, which is mechanical equipment, which is the diffuser. So I'll click the four-way diffuser, drag that onto the sheet. And I'll just put that there for now. Make sure I'm in fine mode. Hidden line. And I need to change this around. Floor plan. Okay, there we go. So I've just changed this to wireframe mode, just so I can see through that diffuser, because when it's in hidden line mode, it's just a white box. So I'll change it to wireframe mode. Alright, and then next up, I'm going to go and find my reflected ceiling plans. So reflected ceiling plans, there was a couple here that we just drew by default, as in like we just drew with detail lines. So a couple examples of that, the exhaust fan was drawn like that. The data points, so if I click on the data point, I'm holding down control, and then the floodlights, so I'll click on those. So those three, they're not three-dimensional families, they are just 2D detail lines. So I'll go Control C, I'll go back to my electrical fixtures, Control V, there they are there, and I'll just click and drag them around. Alright, that's okay for now. Now let's go back to our sheet. So reflected ceiling plan. I'm going to drag my electrical fixtures schedule onto my sheet. There we are. And I'll just remove the title. And it's going to look something like this. Now I can just play around with this basically on the sheet. I can place it wherever I want. So I might go something like this. And then it's just a matter of drawing up the table. So using detail lines. And then just spacing these out in a sensible manner. And then just using text to denote that. And I'll probably need to make this a bit wider. So after just a few minutes, I've just sketched something up here. So graphical legends inside of Revit are not as complex as it may seem. It's a little bit cumbersome in some ways because the symbol that you've got here is not saying that Revit will do in schedules by default. So anytime you got something more graphical with these icons, these symbols, that's a legend. And when it's a legend, you can't really pull intelligent information out of it, out of these models. So it's as simple as you may think it is. These are all lines. Each one of these is just dumb text. I've spaced these out. I've dropped and copied all of the symbols throughout the project just here. I've got the symbol, the description, and the location of each of those items. I've filled out just a few here. I'm sure that in the working drawings class, there'll probably be more than this, and there'll be variations in terms of what's written here. But as long as your text styles are consistent, you can change this on the fly. If you need more room, you just drag out one of these columns. If you need more rows, then essentially I suggest that you just copy and paste and then just continue on and drag these lines down and whatnot. So there's nothing too special about it. But once you've got it, so that's on one sheet, I can then go to my next reflected ceiling plan, take my electrical fixtures and then just drag that back in the same place. But remember to turn off the tag or the title for that schedule. Call it something like that, and now they're consistent between the two. Now if I add something to this schedule, it will update on the other schedule because they're both coming from the same location. So that's a good help. That's a good help as well in terms of time saving. So that way you're not editing two electrical schedules at the same time. So that wraps up essentially RCPs for this assignment. However, as I keep reiterating, your RCPs will develop beyond what we've done in this class to respond to the project's needs as required. There are two ways that we're going to model joinery families inside our assessment task. The first method is the more simplistic method, which is to model families in place inside the model. And the next version is a more detailed methodology where we build a joinery family in an external environment using nested families and then bringing that whole module into the project as one superfamily essentially. So really the first component, so just for a bit of context, I'm on my working ground floor plan, and by now you really will understand why having a working plan is important versus your production plans. You can see how messy my working plan is. And I still can see furniture, all my lighting equipment, I've got dimensions everywhere, reference planes, but it's important because I need to understand context compared to other items as we continue to model. And I don't want to keep switching things on and off on view templates on our production set of drawings. So what I'm going to do is in my working floor plan, I'm going to go up to architecture, component, and then under component, I'm going to click on model in place. What's going to happen now is it's going to prompt me to pick a category of family that I want to model. And in our case, it's going to be casework. Casework is a joinery family, just American terminology. Click OK, and it's going to ask us to name this casework. So in this instance, let's just name this bathroom, vanity, ground. So OK, and basically everything turns grey. When it turns grey, we have the ability now to use our modeling tools, and you'll notice that our modeling tools have changed. So we no longer see architecture, system, structure in the ribbon in the tabs and the ribbon, we now have create, insert, annotate. And under create, we have extrusion, blend, revolve, sweep, swept, blend, all these void forms, model lines, subcomponents, and then eventually the green tick or the red cross. So this acts as basically like a family modeling environment, but within the project. So this is the methods or the times in which you want to do this is if you need to model something crudely and quickly. So with these vanity units, we're not modeling drawers or carcasses or kickers or anything like that. They're just going to be basically big boxes, big rectangle boxes. That's essentially it. And maybe apply some materials to them at some point, and that's fine. There's no parameters associated to them. There's nothing fancy about them, but it's much quicker to model like this. Now, extrusions, blends, revolves, sweeps, I'll go through these as we need to. I won't spend a lot of time on each of these because, to be honest, any of these forms here you've already done inside of Rhino back in the middle of the year. So, and then the void forms are essentially all the same types of objects, but just subtractive geometries rather than additive, but we'll get into that later. So I'm going to start with extrusion. I'm going to click on extrusion and I get like a sketch palette up here, and really what I want to look at is in the properties window my extrusion start and end. So at the moment, if I draw a rectangle, so let's go into the bathroom and I'm just going to draw a rectangle, something like this around the vanity area, something like that. And I can then click on these and just dimension these up. So I'll give that like 400 deep. And how wide is it? 825. Let's just say it's 800. So, yep, that's fine. 400 by 800. And then we can see here the extrusion starts on at 0, which is the work plane. So the work plane is kind of like a C-plane inside of Rhino. So it's starting at ground floor on the ground level. But let's say it's a floating vanity, so it's going to start a bit higher than that. It's usually easier to start from the end. So we know that a vanity ends at around about 750 mil off the floor. And let's say the extrusion starts at, say, 400 above the floor. It looks like nothing's really happened yet, and when I click the green tick, it still looks like nothing's really happened. So when I click the green tick, I've accepted this model sketch, so this box has now been modeled, and I can just use these grips to change its size on the fly if I want, but I prefer to type in the numbers that I want exactly. But I still can't really do anything else. You can see nothing else is selecting because I'm still within this family environment, this modeling environment. So I'll click the green tick again, and now I'm back into my modeling environment. And if we want to see this in 3D, I'm just going to click on this door, this wall, and go BX on my keyboard, create a section box, and then I'm just going to drag this down a little bit. Okay, and I'll even drag this back a little bit as well. So there's our toilet, and there's now our vanity. Pretty easy, pretty crude. And you can see there's a PowerPoint underneath that vanity unit as well. And in fact, we probably want to lift that PowerPoint to be above. This is why it's so important to have as much modeling done as 3 dimensions as possible so you can get references to each other. So before we do that, you can see now I can click and I can drag this family wherever I want. But in order to really edit it, I need to click on edit in place, and that opens back up that family. You can see now everything else goes gray again, and I can only select this item. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to do a couple of more things. So I'm going to change this, and I'm going to go extrusion start to be at 700. So I end up with like a thin top like this. And then I'm going to go Control C, click on this Control C, paste, align to the same place, Control V, and then I'm just going to drag this down. So I end up with basically 2 boxes on top of each other. And then this one ends at 700 and it starts at 400. So something like that. Now, why have I done that? Because I want to give these 2 different materials. Again, these are not carcasses, there's no drawers, nothing like that. They're just 2 boxes, and we're just going to give them 2 different materials. So under materials, I'm going to click on this Benchtop. I'm going to click on, in the properties window, material. I'm going to click on these little 3 dots where it says by category. And that's going to bring up our materials editor. And let's make a new material. So I'm going to go create new. Right click, rename, and let's call this one STN01, stone 01, underscore stone benchtop. We'll give that a white finish. And in terms of our surface pattern, we'll just give that a, give it a concrete pattern. And we'll just make that like a really light grey. something like this. So okay, and that's now done, and you'll see that that's been added. So there's our light stone material. Then in terms of the carcass, we'll give that a material as well, and let's give that a vinyl timber finish. So rename VYN01 vinyl finish 1, and we'll just type that in. Vinyl timber. And then in terms of material, let's give this just let's find an appropriate brown that's not going to look too something like that, like a dark brown. And I won't give it any pattern or anything like that. We don't have any wood patterns that are installed by default, but that's honestly, it's no big deal. We'll leave it as is. Say okay, and there's our wood paneling, our timber as well. So just graphically it looks like something, that's fine for now. So next up is let's add some more items to this vanity. So I'm going to go back to my working view, and I'm going to go now I'm going to open up my family library that you got in the last class, and I'm going to find this vanity unit just here and these taps, and I'm just going to go Control C, back to our working floor, Control V. Oops, that's right. We actually need to go a different way. We need to open those up. So right here, so click on the vanity and then say Edit Family, and then insert into our class for today. All right. Now, when I do that, you're going to see the vanity will do something like this. It looks really weird, and that's because it wants to place it on a vertical face. So it's like basically on its side. So in the ribbon, I'm going to say place on a face, and you'll see now it will place it on top of this vanity unit. So I might just place that there like so. So I know that's sitting on top of it. And if I go back to my 3D, you'll see that that's now sitting, that bowl is sitting on top of that vanity unit. And it's even cutting a little hole into the base of where like the plumbing fixture would need to go. Now let's do that one more time. I'll go back to my 3D of my, whoops, back to, where is it? View 1? No, I'll close that. I don't need that anymore. There we go. Okay, take the taps, same thing, Edit Family. And we'll go Loaned Project and Close into today's class. No, I don't want to save this. And same thing again. So it will take me to my plan view. And then in this case, I do want to place it on a vertical face because I want it to be basically stuck on the wall. And I just need to hover around, maybe hit spacebar if I need to straighten that up. Hit escape, and there's my vanity unit, or there's my taps. So I'll turn off my line weights just so I can make sure that's all good. That looks like it's lined up. Now what I can do is I can dimension the vanity and the middle of the bowl, and I can see it's not centered. So I'll just click on here and then click on the little equals button, and it centers up that bowl. And then what I'll do is I'll go AL, align, I'll find the center of the bowl, and then I'll move the center of the tap to be over the bowl, like so. So it looks something like this. Let's just see how this looks in 3D. I think these taps, firstly I need to be flipped around. So I'm just hitting spacebar to flip it, to rotate it around the wall. And then the elevation, I'll change this to 1 meter off of the ground. So it's something like this. So it's a bit higher off of the bowl. Okay, so I'll click Finish Model. And now what you'll notice is that when I hover over this vanity, it selects all of those items at once. It selects the tap, the sink, the bowl, and the vanity unit as one object. Even when I move it around, it moves all as one object. And so that is called a nested family. We could have just modeled the casework and then just stuck the bowl and the taps in, but it kind of makes sense to do this because if we want to move this bowl or if we want to move this vanity, they all sort of move together, so it makes a lot of sense. And then what I'll do in 3D is I'm just going to move this GPO to be a bit higher. So I'll make that, say, 1000 as well. And then I'll move that, just using my arrows, I'll move that across closer to the wall. And I might even move that back down to 900. Okay, something like that. Alright, so now we've got a vanity unit inside of our bathroom, which is good. And I might just drag that out. When I go back to 3D, I can see that I've dragged one out but not the other. So I need to drag this one out. Or what I can do is go AL, find that surface, and align them back up. So the bolt, that's a bit deeper now. So when I move this back around here, I'll cut the wall back this way. This is what our little powder room looks like. Door opens, light switch, toilet, vanity. We can put a mirror in a little bit later, but that's our first casework model now done. So that's our vanity unit for in here. Now we can keep playing around with this. So modeling in place is really for more of your simplistic family. So that is a very simple family, but it does work for us. So let's say, for instance, let's take maybe the laundry. We can do the same thing again. I'll go architecture, component, model in place. Again, choose a casework family, and I'll call this one laundry casework. Alright, and again, extrusion. And this time I'll make it even more simplistic. So I'll make sure I'm modeling over the plasterboard, because of course the plasterboard would already be in by the time we do this. I'll make that 600 deep. That's fine. And then its height, we'll start it at 0 and bring it up to 900. Okay. We'll say okay. That's now done, and okay again. Now you'll see this time, if I go back to my 3D, and let's turn off my section box. I'll turn the section box back on. You'll see that that is a much more simplistic model we did. So we've got the vanity unit in here, which looks good, and then in the laundry we just have basically a square that denotes where our laundry trough would be, and where we'd have a bench top, and we'll probably have some overhead cupboards as well. But right now that's just modeled as a box. So you can go detailed, or you can go super simple like this, and most of the time it's more like this super simple in these models, because you're just trying to understand the sizing of objects and where things will be located and their relationship to other things like door swings and the room sizes, and again even like your PowerPoints and whatnot. Now I've noticed that I forgot to put PowerPoints in the laundry, and of course we're going to need to. We're definitely going to need to. We do have an exhaust fan in there, which makes sense, but we're definitely going to need some more PowerPoint. So then again, I'll go back to my RCPs, work on that, add my electrical plans, add in my PowerPoints, and then come back here and continue modeling and so on and so forth. And I might even, start modeling this up to be more detailed and add in some just indicative dryers and washers, so I can make sure that my when the plumber comes in to rough in, that my supply and drainage pipe work is roughed in the right location. Okay, so let's go up to level 1, and let's do this again, but we'll go up to the bathroom up on level 1. So I'm going to go architecture, component, model in place, casework, bathroom vanity, level 1, and again we'll just start modeling up. And now that I've got my design down pat from the ground floor, I can work out how this is going to work. So generally speaking, your vanity is about 1200 wide. Well, there can be various really. We'll go 550 deep, something like that. And then again, the same deal with sizes. So it starts at 750. So it ends at 750, but the first layer starts at 700. So that's our bench top. We can say okay, and then I can just copy that, Control C, paste in the same place, and then just edit the second one. So the second one ends at 700 but begins at 400, like so. Say okay, and let's just make a section box around this. Okay, so you can see how that's coming together. And again, I can click on this family, go edit in place, so I can start adding those materials. So I'll click on the benchtop, material, add, and I'll find my stone. There it is. And then my vinyl, timber, there it is, timber vinyl. Okay, looks good. Now, what I can do as well, we'll do this one slightly differently. So let's say, okay, we're done. That model in place is now complete. But what I can do is go back to my ground floor, my level 1. I'll just go CM on my keyboard, just to bring up my families, and I can just go place now my families independently. So again, this was placed at 1,000 above the finished floor level. CM again, let's find the bowl, there it is there. Make sure I click on place on face, and I can just place this here. And again, I can do the same thing. I can go dimension the width of the vanity versus the width and the location of the bowl, equal that. And now that I have that location, AL, center of bowl, center of tap, done. Go back to my 3D, and it looks like this. So it's a little bit different this time. It means I can move the vanity and I can move the taps independently. It's really 6 of one, half dozen of the other, whichever way you want to go about it. But the point I wanted to make is that you've got the freedom to do both. You can put them all into one nested family, or you can model them separately. This is going to be the same in the kitchen family when we model that one up, even though that's a bit more detailed. In those instances where you are adding more detail to those families, I tend to suggest that you stick them all together into one family, especially as these models get bigger. The less objects that you've got to select, the better. And generally speaking, if you're going to edit a kitchen, you want to open up that kitchen by itself and then move everything around, because everything is sort of within relation to each other, all the appliances and white goods, and then close it, load it back in the family. The whole thing just updates at once. The other thing to consider as well is this is a single dwelling, so everything is really just a once-off. It's modeled in one location only. But if you're working in commercial or if you're working in multi-res, you're going to have the same kitchen, the same bathrooms repeated multiple times. So again, the more you can put into a family, the more it means you just have to change or edit that one family, and it updates everywhere else. If I had 5 of these bathrooms and the vanity was separate to even the taps, if I wanted to change the taps, it would be a very slow process, versus if all of this is one family, I just click on it, update the tap type or even the tap finish, click close, and all those families update. So this is a very, very quick crash course in model in place families, but we'll move on to I'll give you actually just one more example. So let's go back down to the ground floor and let's just do the pantry really quick. So again, super crude, super quick. Component, model in place, casework, and we'll call this one walk-in pantry, and extrusion, and I'm just going to draw these lines myself, again making sure I'm selecting the plasterboard, and we'll go 400 deep shells. Okay, we'll just go something like that. And for the first one, let's say that the first shelf is, I don't know, 300 off the ground. And it's going to be a spacing of it'd be like 320 really. We'll just round it. So it'll be something like that, and we'll click OK. Then what we'll do is I'll click OK, and then I'll just go click on this and go BX to make sure I get into my my pantry. And in fact, the first one's probably going to be higher than 300 off the ground, isn't it? So I'll just go like this, move this back here, move this back here. Double click to go back into the family. And I can even just use any of my views, like my back view or left view. I can just copy these literally just from one place to another. Control C, paste, Control V, and then it'd just be a case of just using some maths to change that up. So the next one starts at 600 and ends at 620, and you get the idea. You can start building shelves up in here. Now, again, there's nothing that special about this. It's just representative, but it does help later on down the track when you're just trying to model this up. It's a quick way to model it, and then you can actually sketch them out and start really designing what these casework or what these joinery units are going to look like. And generally speaking, you want to do that, actually sketch them out. But again, in the meantime, you just need something indicative. Then this is the best method to utilize until you get to that point where you know exactly what you want, where you want, how you want. Our kitchen family is going to be modeled in more of the traditional sense in the family environment, and it's going to be created by a number of nested families that are created and then put together. So what you're looking at here is the project from last year, so ours will look slightly different to this. But essentially, this is a casework family that has an amalgamation of a number of other families built within it. So to give an example, say the benchtop itself, that's just geometry modeled within this nested family environment. But if I hide that for a second, you've got these cases here. So these base cabinets, they are a family. The doors themselves, or the drawers, they are a family. The doors are a family. Obviously, the dishwasher is another family. The sink and the tap are another family. Then you have a backplate and a kicker panel as well. And these are all separated different families. But what happens is when these link, or when these go back into your project, this will select all as one object. So really, these aren't as complex as it may seem. It's just a matter of building a couple of components and then bringing them into one family environment. So the way that you generally start with this is you normally would sketch this out with pen and paper because you want to have some idea of what you're going for. As you would know by now, Revit is not always the most versatile designing software. So sometimes sketching this out, you may have a design in Rhino or SketchUp that you've been working on, and then you would bring it into Revit and then model from there. But what I've been doing is I've gone into our working floor plan for our project, and I've started doing some rough dimensions around the kitchen area, and particularly around the sizes of the cabinetry that we're after. So I know that our island bench is going to be, give or take, 3 meters long. It will be with two 600 cabinets, 900 cabinet and another 900 cabinet. And then along the working bench wall, they're going to be basically 800 because they're all equal, which is a total length between this nib wall and the pantry, which is 4 meters. So divide that evenly into 5 units. Of course, you got to have one for the fridge as well, and you end up with something around 800. Now, that's typically casework joinery units come in different sizes, usually divisible by 3s, but in some instances where you want consistency, they're basically any shape or size can be made to fit, though it's always good to start with normal standard proprietary sizing. So with this in mind, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go File, New Family, and then I'm going to choose a casework family and click OK. And when that opens up, it's going to open up with a couple of reference planes and some standardized parameters to begin with. It doesn't really matter. It's neither here nor there whether we have them or not. So I'm going to delete them for now. And so what we're seeing is this center point here is where the model would be inserted. We've got 2 reference planes on either side, one for the back and one for the front. So what we're going to do in here is we're going to call this sort of our master joinery or our island bench file. So I'm going to just extend these out a little bit, and I'm happy to call one of these corners our reference point. So I'm going to delete that, unpin that and delete that. I'm going to delete that. And then I'm going to start just drawing, using these reference planes, I'm going to start just drawing some of the lines that are going to create our casework. So I'm going to take this and drag this over here. You'll notice that some of these reference planes are named. When I click on them, this one says front, back, left, and right. It doesn't really matter we use those or not. But what I will do is create some more reference planes. I'm going to go up to create and then use reference planes, or RP for short. And I'm just going to draw some along here like so. I'll do a couple of more. Okay, so it looks something like this. And so the reason why I'm starting off with these basically these dashed lines, these reference planes, because I'm going to basically dimension out the casework from here. So remember, we're working on the island bench. So I've got one dimension there. I'm going to do one dimension like that, another dimension like that, and then dimension these across like this. Then what I'm going to do is start just measuring these out, and I'll do another one from this point to this point like so. So I know that we're not actually, in this instance, this doesn't matter too much. We're not going to have that there, because don't forget that we've got a wall that we're ending on. So what I mean by that is, if I go back to our floor plan, the bench terminates at the wall. So we're going to have a waterfall end at this end of the bench, but it's just going to obviously finish flush with the wall here. And in terms of depth, I mean, what would we do? Probably maybe 1100 thick. Yep, I think that would work. 1100 deep breakfast bench, nice deep breakfast bench. So that answer we can place in here already, so we know that this is going to be 1100. Now, reference planes are very important when creating families, because they really drive the location of geometry, particularly when we use parameters, which at this point we're not, but we will be in some other families that we're creating. So keep that in mind. So I'm just going to drag this up here. And so we work back from a known location. So if we pretend this area here is where our wall is that goes into the pantry, we know we're going to start off with a 900mm cabinet. Then we have another 900mm cabinet. And then we have a 600mm cabinet. That's going to be for our dishwasher. Followed by another 600mm cabinet, which could be for our cutlery drawer. Followed by 40mm for the waterfall to go down, like the waterfall bench top to fall down the side of the cabinet. So it's going to look something like this. We're then going to have probably a cabinet depth of, well, let me just double check the last project to make sure I'm utilizing similar numbers. So there's our last one. And you'll see when I go to a floor plan, this is how we drew it last time. So you've got the total depth, the width, the different cabinets, and then we start basically placing all of we make our cabinets in a separate family, so in a nested family, and then bring them in and sort of stick them together, much like you actually would on site. So you would pretend that this environment is your construction site. All the cabinets come to site, you screw them, drill them together, put the cabinet doors on, plumber comes in, fits in all the sinks, then your stonemason comes in, puts the stone in, and then you're done. So that's how we work with that. So the total depth of our cabinetry from the front, yep, 603. So we're going back to here. So we have another reference plane around about there. And I'll call that 600 deep. Okay, so that's pretty good for now. That gets us off the ground. So this is our main joinery family. So I'm going to go File, Save, or actually not yet. I won't do that just yet. What I will do is I go File, New, Family, and again grab another casework family. Okay, so now this is going to be a parametric family. Okay, so what we'll start with is we're just going to draw a cabinet essentially. So I'm going to go just draw a box. So extrusion. I'll grab my rectangle tool, and what I'm going to do is I'm purposely going to draw on these dashed lines, the reference planes, click once, click again, and then click these padlocks here. Okay, now if you miss one of those padlocks, no big deal. So let's say I forget to hit a couple of the padlocks. All right, let's say I'll do that again. Create extrusion, and I do this time, and I forget to click the padlock, so I hit escape, and I accidentally, I haven't clicked them. What I'll do is I'll go to my line tool in the modify panel, and I'll click on the dash line, the reference plane, and then click on the magenta line, and then hit the padlock. Again, the dash line, the sketch line, the padlock. And I'll do this each time for all 4 corners. The reason for that is because, again, you note before I said that the reference planes drive the location of geometry in families. When you use parameters, it's not actually the geometry that moves, it's the reference planes that move. And if the geometry is locked to the reference plane, it in turn moves. But without doing that, the geometry would stay exactly where it is. Now, this is a parametric family, so we want these items to move. So we want to make sure that our geometry is locked to that. So that's fine. That extrusion starts at 0 and ends at 250. So I think in our case, let's say it starts at 100, and we'll say that we'll go up to, where would we go up to? Say 860. Okay, so I'll say okay. And if I go to my 3D, we just have a box that looks like this, and I'll change this to shaded mode. Now, this is not exactly true. This is a carcass, so we should have an opening in this cabinetry. So what we'll do firstly, though, is I'll show you that this is indeed parametric. So in the modify, in the modify panel, I'm going to go across to my properties, and then you'll see here the little blue 4 squares, which is our type, our family types. If I click on that, you'll see there's a width, depth, and height, and we can change that on the fly. So with my width, I can say this is 900 wide. I can say it's a 600 wide cabinet, and you can see that changes. I can do that again, and we'll say that its depth, instead of being 600, the depth is 900. Click apply, and that changes as well. So I'll change that back to 600. So okay. Now what I need to do is go to my front view, and under, see my height here, I've got a height parameter, but notice, watch this. If I go back to here and I change my height, which is currently at 900, if I change that to say 1500, nothing moves because the geometry is not locked to the reference plane. The reason why the width and the depth moved is because the geometry was locked to that. So what do? We click on our front view, and here we have the geometry, and I'm just going to drag this up to the top and then hit the little padlock. As for this down here, what I'm going to do is I'm going to use a dimension, and I'm going to go from this point here to this point here, click on that, and lock that at 100. So what that means is no matter how high or low this cabinet goes, there's always a gap of 100 at the bottom. And that makes sense because you got to have a place to put your kicker. So let's do that again. I'll go back to my 3D, click on my type properties, and then change this height to 860, which is the height we wanted. Click OK. That drops down. That's now good to go. So next up, we're going to go to our front view, and we're going to do some more reference planes. So we need to create an opening for our carcass. So what I'll do is I'm going to go RP. I'm going to use my offset up here in the green ribbon, and I'm going to type in 18, and I'm just going to trace over the edge of this box, hit spacebar to flip that over. I'm going to go one there, one down the side, another down the side, hit spacebar to flip it, and one across from here as well. Okay. Then what I'm going to do is I'm going to dimension these up. So I'm going to go from this reference plane to that reference plane, this one to this one, here to here, and here to here. Really important now is that I click on the dimension and then I padlock it. Click on the dimension, padlock. And what that means is no matter how high or wide I make this cabinet, this will always be 18 millimeters from the edge. And this will make sense in a second. We have one more that we have to do. I have to go back to my floor plan and do one more reference plane at the back of my carcass. And I'm going to go dimension, 1, 2. I'm going to click on the reference plane, click on the dimension, change that to 18 mil, click on the dimension and padlock it as well. Okay, so what I'll do now is you'll see if I go back to my front view. So here I am in my front view. I'm just going to quickly show you an example. I'll change the width to say 1800. Click OK, and you'll see that those reference planes are still 18 mil off the edge of the box. That's why we use the padlock tool. So what I'll do now is I'll go create, and now I'm going to use my void extrusion. So I'm going to go void forms, void extrusion. I'm going to use my rectangle tool again, and I'm going to click on the inner reference planes, 1 and 2, hit the padlock, 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 and padlock, and then click OK. And then I'm going to go to my 3D view, and you'll see I've got this orange box here. So what I need to do is drag this orange box in, and what I'm going to do is to go to my floor plan, click on that orange box, drag that back to that reference plane and hit the padlock, and then drag this one to the front of my carcass and hit the padlock. So when I go back to my 3D view, it's going to look something like this. I'm going to have an orange box inside a grey box. Now the last step is to come up to the modify panel, click on cut, and then click on the orange box, and then click on the grey box. And you'll end up with something that looks like this. So we now have a carcass. Okay. Just to start. But you'll see now that when I change this size, so if this is a 900 wide carcass, that's fine. But let's say that this time I need a 450 wide carcass. I click OK, and that updates straight away. Much, much easier than make this way. We don't have to make multiple carcasses. We can just make one and then continue to just place this inside our project. So what I'll do now, I'll say OK, and we got to do one more thing. We have to add a material parameter to our carcass. So what I'm going to do is click on the carcass itself, and then in the properties window there under materials there's this tiny little button just here. Click on that button, and it brings up to a little window that is associating a parameter to this item. So where it says currently none, I'm going to click on the little little icon here, which creates a new parameter. And so you have the ability to make different types. You have a type-based parameter and an instance-based parameter. And I'll explain what these are a little bit later, but I'm going to start with now the type-based parameter. I'm just going to call this cabinet finish and say OK and OK, and that's basically it. All right, now I am going to go File, Save As, Family, and I'm just going to save this to today's class. I'm going to give this the prefix JN for joinery underscore carcass, and I'll make that the 3D view as the source view. Okay, okay. And then what I'll do now is I'll go load into project, and when I load into project, I've got a bunch of projects open, but I just want family 1 because that's our main island bench, and I'll say okay. And here's our joinery. So I can place this just here, and you can see that fits really well. I'll place another one. Well, actually, it's already going to fit in the 600. Look at that, perfect, snug. And then there, and that's it. Now for these 900 ones, what I'm going to do, I'll go to my 3D. And you'll see now we're building up already. We've got our 3 carcasses. I'm going to change this to shaded mode. I'm going to click on one of these carcasses. I'm going to go edit type, and we're going to duplicate these and rename them. So for instance, this one here, I'm going to rename. I'll call this one 600 mil, like so. And then we're going to duplicate, and we're going to create another one, and we'll call this one 900 mm, and then make sure that I change the width to 900. Now if I want it to be 450 or 1200, I can do the same thing again. I'll say okay, and now that updates like so. Go back to my floor plan, and I'll just move this into place and copy, and I'll make another one. So you can see already how quick we were able to create all those cabinets. And in fact, there is not going to be a cabinet there because that's where our dishwasher is going to go. But this is going to make life a lot easier when we go around starting to build up more cabinetry. You'll have a standard carcass. You can choose the width and the height and the depth of that. And then we're going to build now some a door or a drawer, which can be either. And then we're going to place them on this carcass or on these carcasses as well. Now, it's important to note that we don't model in Revit. Generally speaking, you don't model like the drawers themselves or the closes or the tracks, the running tracks or anything like that. It's generally just the carcass and the doors, and then you detail basically everything else. Again, always think about the output and work backwards. What benefit would it give you to model every single drawer in your joinery when you're going to look at it in a detail anyway in shop drawings when the joiner actually goes to build that? So you'd be wasting your time. But other things that we can do right now, I'm going to go back to my floor plan. And in fact, I'm going to go to my front view. Okay, so here's our front view. And I'm just going to model our waterfall bench because we can do that. Alright, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to go create, extrusion, and this time I'm just going to use my line tool. And I am going to purposely draw just randomly wherever I feel like. I'm just drawing over everything. So this is definitely not right, because it's going to be something like this, like an L bench, or this. Remember, we're in elevation here. So here's our bench top and then the waterfall over the side of the bench. I'm then going to use my line tool and do the align lock procedure. So click on the reference plane, click on the sketch, padlock it. Click on the line or the reference plane, click on the line, and then padlock it. Reference plane, line, lock, and then again here. Reference plane, line, lock, reference plane, line, lock. Okay, and that's right. I should have a 100mm gap here because my kicker goes in here. Don't forget that the carcasses sit on little legs. We don't model the legs. We can draw them, but we don't model them. So this all looks fine. Click OK. Go back to my floor plan, and there's the width of my bench. So I just click and drag and padlock, drag, padlock. Go to my 3D. And you can see already sort of how we're going here. It's a good start. There's still a lot more work to do, but we're getting there. Next up, we want to give these some materials too. So the bench top, what I'm going to do is click on the bench top and then click on the little button here. And then in here, I'm going to make a new parameter, and I'll make that type base, and I'll just call this bench top finish and go OK, and then leave that as gray. Now, it's important to note that I'm not actually applying the material in the family editor. And so you might ask, why is that? The reason for that is because I would rather make a parameter and then answer that parameter in the project, because it's the same. It may be the same bench top. In fact, it most likely will be the same bench top finish as what's in the bathroom vanity units and in the laundry. And so if I apply a material inside of the family editor and I give that a certain stone, and then later on the client changes their mind or you change your selection, you would then have to open up each of the families and change that one by one. And be very slow. So remember, a parameter is essentially a question. So I just created a question saying, what is the benchtop finish for this kitchen cabinetry? I can answer that question in the project, and then so I can use the same stone as what I've applied to those other objects, those other families. And if I want to change that type of stone later, all I would have to do is to go into the material editor, change the codification or change the type of stone I'm using or the benchtop finish, and that will update everywhere else. So that's why we use parameters and answer the question, particularly materials wise, inside of the project. Okay, so next up, let's go back and create another family. So I'm going to go File, New, Family, and then another casework family. Click OK. And now this time we're going to ignore the top view and go straight to the front view. So what we're doing now is we're going to create a door or a drawer type of family. We're going to make it parametric that we can select whether it's a drawer or whether it's a door. So I'm going to go and show you a quick example. So in the finish, in this finished version here, you can see, I'll just change this to here. So I've got a casework, I've got a door here and I have a drawer here, but they're actually from the same family. You can just choose whether it ends up being a door or whether it ends up being a door just with a simple tick box. That's what we're aiming to do. But it's just going to be a standard door. If I isolate that, it's just going to be a standard door with a finger pull. If you want to add door handles or anything like that, you can do so later on, but I'm just going to show you how to do this sort of clean slimline, flush line sort of look. Okay, so what I'll do is I go back to our front view of this new family that we're creating, and I'm going to go extrusion. Whoops, actually, no, what I will do is I'm going to go to one of our side views. So let's go to the right. So that's our back, and this is why it's good to have the reference planes named, and that's the front. So what I'll do is I'll go create, extrusion, and I'm just going to use my line. I'm going to draw straight up, across, come across, and then back down, and then back across. And then I'm going to use my align tool, align the front to there, the back to there, now this looks quite bizarre at the moment because that is like one hell of a thick door, but what we'll do is we'll just drag that back, and I'll change the depth. The depth will be 18 mil. Okay, so it looks like that. Okay, so that's all it looks like for now. And then in the front view, I'll make sure it's padlocked. In fact, what I'll do is I'll make this into shaded mode so it's clearer where I am. Okay, so that's the front of the door at the moment. And if I go to 3D, it just looks like this flat plate at the moment. That's all we've done, just modeled a flat plate. I'm going to go back to my left view or right view, doesn't really matter, as long as I know which one's the front. So that reference plane is the front. I'm going to click on my door panel and then click on edit extrusion, and then I'm just going to model a little finger pull just here, so 45 degrees, something like that, and use my trim command like so. In fact, I might just make that a bit bigger, and then using my trim command to clean that up. Okay, so it looks something like this. Alright, say okay. Now, let's try this again. So it's a pretty flat plate. I'm going to go my top view, and there's my center point. I'm going to untick my center point. Now the reason why I'm doing this is because when the door changes sizes at the moment, you've got the width of this door will be 900, and then you've got the equals on at the top. And so what that means, when you see that dashed line down the middle and the equals, it means that it's going to grow and shrink from the middle. And I don't really want that. I prefer it to grow and shrink from one side to another. So I'm going to click on the center, unpin it, delete it, click on this 900, delete it, click on my left hand side, okay, and then in the properties window on the right hand side, I'm going to say defined origin. I'm going to click on that. So what happens now is if I go up to my 4 blue boxes, and let's change the width and say the width is actually 450, it's a door, click apply, you can see now it grows and shrinks from the left hand side that we decided that corner was the origin, which is what we're after. So I'll click OK. That looks good to me. Go back to my 3D view. That looks all good. And again, I want to click on my geometry, go to my material, click on my little parameter, and we're going to make a new parameter, and we're purposely going to call it the same thing. So we're just going to call it casework finish. I think that's what I called it, and leave it as a type-based parameter, and say OK. And one more thing we need to do is we've got to create some visibility parameters of whether this is a drawer or whether it's a door. So go back to my front view, and I'm going to go up to create, and then I'm going to choose model line. So we haven't used a model line before, but it's basically what the name implies. It just means that it's a line that can be seen in 3D, not just in 2D. So I'll click on model line, and then I'm going to choose my subcategory. Let's go with elevation swing projection. We'll click on that. Let's see what that looks like. That might be solid. Actually, it might have to be hidden lines projection. We'll click on hidden line. No, elevation swing, let's see. Is that dashed? Yes, it is dashed. What about hidden lines? Yeah, okay. We'll go with elevation swing projection. Click on that, and what I'll do is I'm just going to click once in this corner, once in the middle of the door, and the little triangle picks it up, and once there. And that's basically it. Okay, so we got to do a little bit more work quickly. I'm just going to delete those. We need to create a few more reference planes. So I'm going to go RP for reference plane. I'm going to draw one reference plane here, and then I'm going to dimension this once here, and hit tab on your keyboard, click there, and then click the EQ button. Now let's do that again. LI for line, and I'm just going to go once there, once to the middle of the door, once to this corner of the door, hit escape, and let's just see if I make that door taller. Make the door 600 high, click OK. No, that's not working for me. Oh, I know why. Okay, that's all right. So let's drag this back up. So this is a good thing. I forgot about this. This definitely tricks a lot of people. You'll see that currently we're in this elevation, and we have height, and we have reference plane or reference level. But actually under there, if I hit tab on my keyboard, there is actually another reference plane there as well, which is a real pain. I don't know why Revit does this. I reckon it's terrible the way it's designed like this. So you can see the height is 900, but the height of the door can actually be a different height. Now you remember with the carcass before, we left 100 mil at the bottom for a kicker. So whatever height the cabinet is inclusive of the kicker. So what we can do here is we can give this any height we want. So this is the reference height. So we can drag this back down to here. And now I'm just curious to know, we'll go 1. Okay, cool. All right, so what we've done, I'll do this one more time. So I'll delete these. I've got this green reference plane here, which I'm going to delete because it just ends up confusing everyone. So you have a reference plane at the top, reference plane in the middle, and then this reference level is your bottom one just here. So what I'll do now is I'm going to draw my line work again. So create, and then model line, elevation swing projection, and I'm going to click once in this corner, once in the middle of the door, once in this corner of the door down the bottom. Okay, and then I'm going to hit escape, click on this. I'm just going to quickly move this back into the corner and then click on this little padlock here. Okay, so that's now clicked. Now let's just give this another flex. So the height, let's make the height really high. We'll make it like 1500 high because this could be, theoretically, it could be like a pantry door. Okay, so that works. Make it really short, 600. Yep, and you can see that's updating nicely. Let's change that back to, it would actually be 760. Okay. All right. The width, let's change the width. So let's say it's a 300 wide cupboard. Okay, that doesn't work, so we need to change this geometry. I need to move this back to here, because that should now be 300. Yep. Let's go again. Make that 600 wide. Okay, so we're getting some problems here with this geometry, so let's unlock that, drag that back to here, padlock it, drag this back to here, padlock that. Width 600, now width 350. Yep, that's looking much better. 450, nice. 900 wide, beauty. Okay, that's good. All right, so I'll change that back to 450. Okay, now that's a door complete, but what we have to do, is I'm going to now draw what would be a drawer. So a door, you've got your two hinge points and where the latch of the door is. But for a drawer, you start at the bottom, go to the center of the top, and then back down again. We need to do something similar to before. I need to do a reference plane and just draw something like this. And then dimension it from this point to here to here. Click, hit the EQ, and that's good. Similar to how this was going like that. So I'm going to go back to create a model line. It's going to be a swing and projection, and then I'm going to start in this corner, come up to the center of the top of the door, and then back down to this point here again. All right, and those two, yep, excellent. All right, now let's try this again. Another lot of flexes. So height, let's change that to 900. That works. What about the width? Change it to 600 wide. That also works, that's good. So back to 450, back to 760. Okay, now what we have to do is have a toggle that switches between these. So if this door is a drawer, then we want to see these lines, like the big A, and if it's a door, we want to see these swing lines instead. So I'm going to go back to my 3D, because it might be easier to do from the 3D angle, and I'm going to click on these two lines here, which signify our drawer. Because remember, a drawer is going to be much shorter. Like a drawer will be 200, will be like this. It'll be like 200 mil high, something like that. Okay, so I'm going to click on these two lines here, and then in the properties window, you'll see underneath graphics, you've got visible, and there's a little tick box, and then next to that, you have that tiny little button again. Click on that little button, and we're just going to create a new parameter that's type-based. We're going to call this one draw. Okay, click OK, and then OK again. Now, the other way, the two swing lines for the door, click on those, same thing again. Click on the that little button there to associate a new family parameter. You'll see drawer is there, but we want to make another one that's then called door. It's type-based. Say OK and OK. Now, what we have to do is make these two different types. One more thing we're going to do is click on the door itself, and we already have the material associated. That's good. So then we go to the family types, so what we were doing before to flex the door, and you'll see now under other, you've got door, there's a tick mark, and a drawer with a tick mark. So we need to make two types of doors now. We're going to make a new type, and we're going to call this one door. Okay. And then we'll go okay. And for this one that's a door, we untick the drawer, and then vice versa. We make another new one, call this one drawer, and do the opposite. Tick that, untick that, and then click OK. And you'll see one will turn grey because we've currently got the other selected, but you won't see that when we load this into the project. All right, last step, to go file, save as, family, and then I'm going to call this one JN, and this will just be door draw. Alright, now that's done. I'm going to go load into project and load into that family 1. Okay, and there's that door. Okay, so you can see at the moment just the door is showing, but as soon as I click on this and I choose the drawer version, the opposite happens. It shows me just the drawer. But now I can change the height of this drawer to whatever I want. So I can go edit type and I can change the heights here, and I just need to make sure I rename it. So we'll go through that together. So I'm going to go change this back to a door. And then from here, I can also change its offset. So I can click on that and go elevation or offset from host. Doesn't really matter. I can say 100, and that's going to lift the whole door up. And then I'm going to go back to my floor plan. And there's my door there. And I'm just going to drag this back to there like this. And then just move it back to here. And then I'm just going to use my, actually I might do this from the front view so it will make more sense. So there's my cupboard door. I'm going to go DM to draw to mirror it. Click at the top, click across, and there's my mirrored cupboard doors. We'll go back to 3D. We've got something that looks like this. Okay, it's coming together. Got a little bit more, quite a bit more sort of little finicky manipulation, but that's a good start. Okay, and we want, let's say that we want drawers on the other two. We need to sort of dimension out what we want those drawers to look like. Even these doors themselves probably need to be a bit smaller because we need some way to get our finger under there too. We need about 20 mil less. So I'm going to go edit type for these doors and drop that down. We'll make that a 740 high door. So okay, see those doors come down. We've got an area to put our fingers behind the door now. All right, then we'll go back to our front view, and we need to do quite a bit more work here now. We actually need to dimension out what we want our drawers to look like. So I'm going to go reference plane, and we need to just start. I'm just going to start by just putting a few reference planes here. Okay. Now, I have no idea exactly whether this is going to be right or wrong. I'm just going to dimension some of these out. And let's play around with this. So I'll say 240, 240. And that's going to have to be okay, cool. Alright, so the gap that we have there should be close to, what's that, 33, that's fine. Alright, so I'm just eyeballing this. We can play around with these a little bit later. It's just to get a rough idea. So let's go again and grab another one of the doors. So I can just copy this across. And I'm going to click on this door and we're going to change it to a drawer. So there's our drawer. And now I'm going to go back into edit type and we're going to change this height. So we're going to have two different types, two different sizes of drawers. So we have two bigger drawers and then a thinner drawer on top. So I'm going to rename this one and we'll go drawer underscore, let's say it's, how deep would this be? Let's say it's 260, 240, let's say 240. Well, what's its width? The width, this is actually a 900 wide cupboard, so 240 by 900 mm. And okay, let's just change that up. So 240 wide, width is 900 because it's the full length of the drawer. We'll say okay, and we've got something that looks like this. So I just drag that across, and I'll copy that to here. Okay, we can see this is too tall for our top one, so we need to make that a little bit smaller. So the height of that one is going to be 200. So we'll click on this, edit type, duplicate, and this will be 200. And we just need to change the size, update the height to 200, click OK, and there we go. Should probably be a little bit higher than that actually, but that's okay. We'll just see how this looks. Alright, so we're getting somewhere. Alright, so that's not too bad. We need to play around with this a little bit more to make sure we got the right gaps associated. So we might have to play around a little bit more with our sizes, but it's not too bad. The most important thing is that you know how these nested families are working together. Okay, so I want to make sure these drawers are actually lined up, like so. So these, I might make these a little bit bigger, these drawers. So instead of being 240, let's make those 250. And I'll make sure I rename. There we go. Now, what we can do is I can take these three and we can copy those across to here, and then it's just a matter of making these a little bit smaller. So what we can even do is we might just play around with these families a little bit more. So I'm going to go back into edit type. So I'm going to go back into our drawer family or our door family, and see where it says width here. I'm going to change this. I'm going to change this parameter type. So at the moment, the only way we can change its width and height is by going edit type, changing it, and then going OK and duplicating it. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to change the width to be instance based. So I'm going to click on dimensions and then click on width and then click on the little pencil, and then we can't change it to instance based. That's frustrating. What we can do is let's go like this. So let's go delete. We'll do another dimension. We'll go from there to there. Be exactly the same, except we're going to go new parameter. So up in the modify, I'm going to click on create parameter, and this time I'm going to click on instance, and we're just going to call this one panel width. So it's essentially the same, but we're just making our own, but it's going to be instance based. So we'll say load into project and load back into family 1, and then click on overwrite the existing version. Now what happens is you'll see they all revert back to a size, but we have these little grips here. So we can just drag this. We can drag these to be whatever size we want. Notice that the grips are only available for the side though. We can't change how high they are because they're still type based, but the width we can change. Now the reason why I've done that is because the widths will change. You will have generally in these projects you'll have only just a certain type of heights of drawers, but you'll have very different lengths of drawers. So that's why one is type based and one is instance based. It just becomes a little bit easier to work with. So if we go back to our 3D, we have something that looks like this. Okay, now we need to cover up the back of these panels behind here. So the way that we do that, alright, so I'm going to go back to my front view, and I'm going to do some modeling in this space. So I'm going to go create, extrusion, and then use some rectangles And I'm going to go from here down to there, and I'm going to make that 30 mil. And then I'm going to do the same thing again here. I'm going to go from the base of this drawer to this part of the drawer, and from there to there. I'm going to do the same here. And the same here. And then from this point to this point. So at the moment we can see through these drawers at the moment because we're in wireframe mode. So we're essentially seeing through the cabinetry. Now I'll go back to my 3D. And that looks a little bit cooked at the moment. You can see there's all our plates. But what I'm going to do is we're going to use our line tool. So I'm going to click on all of these. I'm going to say extrusion start. It's going to be minus 18 mil. And our extrusion end is going to be 0. So it looks like this. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to hide these doors. So I'm going to click on each of these doors and go HH to hide. And then you can see what we've done there. So these are the blanks that hide in between where each of the drawers are, where each of the doors are, so you can get your finger behind and pull on the drawer. You don't see the two drawers separately. So then what I have to do is join them up. So I'm going to go up to my modify panel and click on join. I'm going to click on these, and then we need to click on the carcass. Actually, we can't do that because they're different families. Actually, it doesn't even matter. That's fine, actually, even if we can't do that. So, but what we will do is we need to click on this, and we need to give this the same material. So we're going to go new parameter, type base, and we'll call this casework finish. Say OK, and that's now done. Now, what we need to do as well is we need to do a linking of parameters. This is a little bit confusing and it's hard to remember, but it's important. Otherwise, you won't be able to access the full functionality of the families you've been creating. So these casework or these carcasses we made, they have a parameter. If I click on edit type, you'll see that there is this thing. It's our cabinet finish is in here, and then it says edit by category. I need to click on this little dot, this little blank button here, and give this the casework finish link. So you see that has like a little equals button. So what that means is that when I go into the project, we can then change the finish of this material because it's linked into the master family, into the nested family. So I'm going to do the same thing for this one here, the 600 wide carcass. Click on that, do the same thing again, cabinet finish, click on the little button, casework finish, okay. This one I won't have to do because I've already done it, and there it is there, cabinet finish equals. All right, and then we have to do the same thing with the doors. So I click on the doors, and I'm going to go edit type, and I'm going to go casework finish is going to equal casework finish. Click on that, and that's done. But I need to do that for each of the types of drawers. So I need to do it for this one too, the 200. Casework finish equals casework finish. And same with the doors. But I only need to do it for one of each type. So I've done it for one door. I don't need to do it for the other door because it's the same door. So if I go edit type, you'll see they'll already be grayed out because I've already done it. For each of these types listed here, I've now paired those up. All right, so let's just load this into the project and see how we go with this, see how this looks. There's one more thing we need to do though. We need to go back into our floor plan. I'm going to select all of this cabinetry and we're going to move it back 18 mil. So I'm going to click on this. Oh, actually, no. It'd be much easier actually if I just move the benchtop forward. The reason why I'm doing that is so we have our cabinets and our doors. You can see now the cabinets and the benchtop, they end in the same plane. That's important. Okay, so let's load family, save as, file, save as family, and then I'm going to just call this one JN underscore island bench. Well, actually, this would be breakfast bench. Options, save one of the 3D view. Okay, okay. Alright, and let's load this into the project, into today's class. Still very early days yet. Hit spacebar, and I'll just put that there for now. Alright, so let's go to our ground floor. Alright, and we've got something that looks like this at the moment. That's not too bad. So there's our casework. And if I click on that, you can see the little model so far of what we're working on. And if we go into our 3D, you can see our casework there. Still just beginning, but starting to get there. Okay. Now, in terms of how everything looks at the moment, that's not such a big deal. It's actually a pretty good start. So we'll click on the breakfast bench. We'll go edit type, and then we can start adding some of this material. So benchtop, I can just click on the little 3 dots, and I can use now that same stone that we've been using in the other families. So there it is there, stone. Go OK, and OK. You see now that stone's updated. And then same thing with all the casework. So casework finish. Let's find that that vinyl timber finish. There it is there. That brown timber. And you can see that's now updated all of that joinery work as well. But the beauty of this is because we've used the same material on every piece of joinery, if the client turns around later on and says, actually, that vinyl timber finish that we're using, that laminate, I want that to be different. I want that to be, you know, a lighter type of brown, or more of like a neutral type of timber color, or something like this. Now, all you got to do is just update it once, and because that material is applied to every family, you can see that's updated here as well. So it updates everywhere simultaneously. This is why it's always better to apply the material in the project environment than in the family environment, because you'd have to go into each of the families and update them one at a time. Next up, let's add a kicker plate at the front and a cover for the back underneath the breakfast bench part of the bench. So we'll go to a floor plan, or actually, in fact, we can even just go to our front view is fine. And I'm going to go create, extrusion, just a rectangle, and pretty simplistically go from one area to another. That's fine. And then go to our front view, or our 3D, and go OK. And then it's just a matter of playing with the extrusion start and extrusion end. So extrusion end, let's go -50. And the extrusion start, 18. Oops, that should be -50, and that should be -68. Okay, that gives us a 50 mil setback in our kicker. It's probably a little bit too far, actually. Let's go -25. Okay, that looks good. That's fine. And actually, our kicker needs to be split in half because we've got to put our dishwasher in there. So I'll come back to our family, and I'll just break that sketch up. So one part there. Split these lines. Use my trim command. There we go. Okay, and then for the back plate, I'm going to go to our floor plan, create extrusion again, and I'm just going to draw another rectangle from here to here, and then just click on this magenta line, make sure it's just 18 mil. Okay, and the start will be at 0, and the end would be at 860, and then okay. Go to our 3D, and you can see that it's covered up the back of our cabinetry neatly. So we need to give the kicker a material. So we'll go material, create a parameter for that, and we'll make it type based, and we'll just call it kicker finish. And then as for this back plate, we'll just give this the same material as the carcass or the casework. So we'll give it the same parameter, casework finish. So that's now done. All right, so next up, let's go and put in our washing machine. So going to the family library that you had access to, we've got a washing machine, sorry, dishwasher just here. And then we'll go edit family. And then we'll go load into project and close. And we'll load this into the island bench. Or sorry, the breakfast bench. Load that directly into the breakfast bench. No, do not save. So now this becomes a nested family with proprietary components as well. And I'll just place this anywhere around here. And then using my align tool in 3D, I'm just going to align it to the side of the carcass, to the side of that, and then the front of the bench to the front of the dishwasher. So you end up with something that looks like this, which is pretty good. Now that red dashed line is a setting within the, well, it is actually a red dash line, but it shows the swing distance of the dishwasher, so you can, do spatial planning, which is pretty good. But we can turn that off here just by clicking on the dishwasher, going into edit type, scrolling down to the bottom, and then required space under visibility. Just untick that, and that turns off, and that's probably better for now. Okay, next up is our benchtop. Well, really is our sink. So I'm going to go back to the family here and find our sink, and I'm going to take also the tap and go Control C. Go back to our breakfast bench and go Control V. No, I can't copy between a family and a project, that's of course. So I'll just go back to the family, edit family, and then load into project and close. Okay, so I'll just place this anywhere around here for now, that's fine. Now, what we have to do is go to our floor plan and place that where we want it. Now, the reason why we're seeing it like this is because we're in course mode. If I go find mode, you'll see the full detail of the sink. So keep in mind where the edge of the sink is. Somewhere around there is going to be fine. And that's going to be sitting on the floor. Where is it? There it is there. So that is 860. So we'll go 880. Okay. In fact, we'll just put this higher for now, just so we can see. There we go. We can now see where that is. So we'll go into our benchtop, edit extrusion. Whoops. Actually, we're going to use a void. So we'll go create void forms and void extrusion, and we're going to draw. We're just going to trace over the top. Now, you may not be able to actually pick the lines you want, so you just may need to trace it, and that's fine. We'll just trace over. Because if it's an inset sink, then technically it insets slightly off of the actual edge of the sink anyway. You always want a little bit of lip underneath. Okay, that looks good. Go to 3D, and now that orange box is just sitting there. And what we want to do is go cut It's already done it for us, which is great. Okay. And then we take our sink and let's drop that back down to 880. And there we go. So then we've got our sink that's sitting within the base, or within the benchtop, and also within the carcass as well. So if I hide these doors, you'll see there's the sink underneath. And even if I just hide one of them, you'll see how that works. Okay, nice. Now, just want to double check. Now, we may have an issue where we can't cut this family here. So let's just try this once more. So cut against this carcass. No, can't do. Okay, that's a bit frustrating. Let's go edit family. Okay, so we've got an issue where we can't cut the sink through the carcass of our cabinetry. So I'm just going to close this because I'm sick of opening that. Got a lot of different families open up at the moment. Okay, so we got the carcass here and we have the sink, and we can't cut through this family because it's a nested family. Very frustrating. But really, this carcass we need to change because this is not how real carcasses look. They don't actually have tops on them. They have like just a bridging, like a brace there, and then this is open. So let's just edit this family. This is not going to affect anything else going forward, but we should do it anyway ourselves. So I'm going to go to my top view, and I'm just going to go and create another reference plane, and I'm going to go across here. And I'm going to give this a depth of, yeah, sure. Let's say 80 mil. Well, actually, we'll just keep it at the 60 because I think that worked fine. And we will padlock it. So we're going to do, so I'm in just the standard carcass family. We're going to create another void extrusion, but we're going from the plan view this time. And I'm just going to go over that there. Okay, okay, okay. And then I'm going to go to, just click OK, then go to our 3D, and you're going to see we got this top cut, but we also have the bottom cut now. We've got two more. We've got two void extrusions going on. So I have one up here and one down here. Okay, so what I need to do is click on this and go to our front view, and then you can see that there, and I need to drag this down to meet the top of the reference plane and click the padlock, and drag this to the bottom and then hit the padlock. So that way, no matter how tall the carcass is, you'll always end up with something like this. And this is much more representative of what an actual carcass looks like when you buy them. So I'm going to go load into project and close, and I'm going to load it into our breakfast bench or family. I don't want to save the changes, it's fine. But I will update, override, and you'll see now that that's been updated across all of them. And that, again, that's far more representative of how they really look. I'll bring everything back. And there we go. That looks much better. I am just going to edit this void extrusion though, because I want this just come out a little bit more. Oops, I don't want to open that up. That's better. That looks much better. Okay. So, alright, so that's our breakfast bench, our sink. Actually, that void extrusion, I'm getting a little bit finicky now, but I'm going to just add, I'm just going to fill it, these edges, ever so slightly. Just because they won't cut a stone at a perfect right angle. And I'm just adding a 10mm radius to each of the corners of the void extrusion. That's better. Okay, so now let's go back to our family model. Click on the tap, edit family, or the mixer. Load into project and close into the breakfast bench. No, I do not want to save. I should just be able to place this on any surface I want. And so I'm just going to place it right there. Now that's probably going to be sitting on the ground, which it is. So I'll make sure it's elevation. Oh, is it? Let's just double check. Nope, that's sitting at the right location. That's good. Excellent. Okay, that's done. Trying to think. I think that is everything for now. So let's just load this into the project and see how we go. So it's going to go Control S to save it. Load into project and load into our today's class. And I'm going to click the top one, overwrite the existing version. There we go. That's looking very good. Very nice. Excellent. We'll continue to add more detail as we go along. And if we go down to our ground floor plan, you can see how that's coming together now. That looks much, much better. Okay. Now, you want to utilize the same principles. So everything we've gone through, you'll have to, I have no doubt that you'll have to rewatch this video a few times just to get the way that that we put everything together with all these nested families. But there is essentially nothing really new that you'll be using to build the workbench on the other side of the kitchen. So I want you to take the skills and the techniques that you've applied here on the breakfast bench and build up the workbench. And then what we'll go through, and that will be according to your working drawings class. So there might be a particular design that you're utilizing, or you may end up using the same design as what I do. But that's what I'm going to do now, is I'm going to build this up using the same families and techniques. There only will be a couple of differences, which is that you need to insert an oven and that you need to insert a cooktop. When we get to the overhead cupboards, I'll pick that up in the recording and show you that. But for the main bench, the workbench itself, the process is exactly the same as here. We then need to go through the process of creating internal elevations to actually elevate these joinery drawings and then put those out on a sheet as well. So I've continued to work on my workbench kitchen side, and you'll see that these are some common troubleshooting things that you may pick up on. You'll see that my materials are applied to most of my kitchen cabinetry, but not to my pantry. So I'm going to go back in this family, and I've still got much more work to do here. But what I need to do is make sure that I apply those same parameters to this new door. So I'll just bring that across and make sure that that parameter is the same as my casework parameter. I've linked the two together. So the casework finish of these families are now linked to the total casework finish inside of the project. I need to do the same thing with the carcass. So the reason being that these are new carcasses, so we need to ensure that these stick with the rest of the model. So let's just go, let's make sure that these are all good. Okay, excellent. All right, now next up, what I'm going to do is we have a pantry over here, some cupboards. We've got two different drawers, the work area with the stove and the cooktop. I'm going to build another area over here for the fridge with overhead cabinets, then a sort of customized range hood looking thing with some shelving on either side. And you'll note that basically everything is utilizing the same methodology that we were using in the breakfast bench. So for instance, these doors are just The same drawers and same door, the door drawer family that I've just changed to being 2600 high. The cabinet, likewise, is just a larger it's just a standard carcass, but just much taller. So it's the same family, it's being utilized in different ways. So I'll go to my front view, and you can see here my front view, I've got sort of what I want to lay out here. So again, just for your reference, on my pantry side, that's 800mm wide. On the two drawers, they're 900 wide cabinets. In the center is 600, and then I've got a remaining 800 on this side. So everything works out quite well. And what you can see here is this area within here is essentially for the fridge, which will go across there. And then I've got overhead cupboards up here. And then the range hood sort of feature is going to go from this reference plane to this reference plane, and then a couple of shelves on either side next to it. So for this cabinet here, I'm going to build this in a more custom fashion. So I'm not going to use the carcass families we've been using previously. So with that, I'm just going to go create, extrusion, and then just start drawing away. So I know that these are going to be placed there. That's fine. And then I need another piece of geometry just here and another one here. And you can see I'm making them just sort of very rough sizes. Then what I'm going to do is I'm going to delete that, because you got overlapping lines, and so you end up with something that looks like this. Now what I need to do is just go around, dimension this out. So this, by clicking on this magenta line, I'm going to move this line, and I only want that to be 18mm. Same on this side, I only want that to be 18mm, standard melamine size. Then I'm going to take another rectangle sketch, use an offset of 18, and then trace around, hit spacebar, trace around the inside here. So it looks something like this. So I've got the area for my cupboard and an area for my fridge. The depth at the moment in the properties window, it starts at 0 and goes to 250, and that is fine for now. I'm going to click OK, and then go back to my 3D, and there it is there. And then from here, this is the easy part, I'm just going to use my line tool. I'm going to hover over the back of one of these cabinets, and then click on the back of this extrusion, and then vice versa. I'm going to zoom in till I get to the carcass, because don't forget I need to draw on the front or cupboard. So I'm going to click on the front of the carcass and then the front of this extrusion. So the drawers should stand proud of that. Okay, so that's looking pretty good. Now I just need to model a backplate on the back of this cupboard. So that's relatively easy. I'll go back to my front view, create extrusion, and I'll just create a thin extrusion to close that up. So from there to there. Okay, and then it's just a case of doing the same thing again. So the back of this, whoops, back of that to the back of that, and then how thick is that? Minus 600. There we go. And then you've got a cupboard that looks like this. And then I can just join these two, because these are both native geometry that I've been sketching within this family. I can join them. So I'll use the join command and just click once, click again, and now you'll see those lines are gone. That's now one piece of geometry. Okay, so that's all good. And then finishing off, I'll go back to my front view, and I'm just going to grab these drawers. I'm just going to copy that across, and the reason why I'm doing that is because I know it's in the right place in terms of in terms of the plane of the front of the carcass. And then I'll just change this to a door. So we want to go door, and I'll just change its width, and then I'll bring that down to there, and we need to change its height too. So let me just double check. Its height is 700. So edit, duplicate, and this will be door 700 high. Change its height. There we are. And then I'll just mirror that across. And go back to here. And there we go. Something that looks like that. That's all relatively straightforward. Now again, I just want to make sure I've got the right parameters. So I'll click on this extrusion we made for the fridge encasing and the carcass, and I'll click on this little button here to make sure I link the casework finish parameter to that, and then double check the doors as well, because that's a new type of door, so I need to make sure I link those casework finish as well. Okay. All right, let's just quickly load this back into the project to make sure this works. So into today's class, override the last one, the top one, yep. And you'll see this will update here. Very nice, that looks good. And I'm cutting through the top of the cupboard, that's why that looks like that. So if I bring that up to the ceiling, even if I just hide the ceiling, that's what it looks like. So that's working pretty well now. What I'll do is I'll just drag this section box back as well. There we are. That's a good view of the kitchen now. So it's working quite well. Now I've left plenty of room for a taller fridge. You could make this cupboard a little bit taller if you like, but that's something that maybe I can adjust a bit later on, but it's it's an easy thing to move around. The other thing as well is I've got some conflict between this little nib wall and the joinery, and I'm going to move the wall back to meet the joinery. So I'm just going to go there and there, and there we go. The reason why I've done that is because this joinery is all, they're all standardized sizes really, and it's worked out quite nicely in terms of being even numbers. So I don't want to mess around with the joinery just for this nib wall, which would only be hiding some sort of surfaces anyway. There's nothing structural about it. There's no reason why it can't move. Okay, and then the other thing to take a look at is my PowerPoint. So I'll click on my fridge, and you can see there's a PowerPoint behind, and that PowerPoint is at 1500, I think, off of the finished floor level. And then I have another one here, just next to the bench. And I'm going to need another one behind my oven as well, but lower, and one above where my range hood is. So I'm just going to copy this across. Okay, and then I'll copy this one as well. All right, and then one of these I'm going to drop down. So I'll drop this one down to say 600. And so we can't see that, but if I hide this cabinetry, you can see there's my PowerPoint, and we're going to need that for our oven, if it's an electrical oven. And then this one here, I'm going to put up much higher. So let's say, again, maybe 1800, because that's going to be up behind the range hood. So it's important to make sure we've got power to those. Now, so that's why as well, inside of the pantry, we've got a PowerPoint in there for like a microwave or anything we need like that. But you'll go through the exact locations of all your PowerPoint locations and services requirements in your working drawings class. So let's go back into this model, edit type, and let's kick on. So I'm going to go to my front view again, and I'm just going to draw. I'm going to go create, extrusion, and just create an area like this. Now, you see me padlocking these sketches sometimes and other times not. The reason why you don't actually have to really padlock here is because these are static families. You're building them bespokely, one-off dimensions. I'm not expecting to be able to shrink and just grow the kitchen sizes just by grabbing some grips. You can do that, but then you've got to be very careful about what you're aligning and locking to, and what the formula structure is of those parameters. So that's fine. We'll say okay. I'll go back to here, go to my 3D, and again, I'm just going to make sure that I go back to the bench meets the back of the range hood, and then that is a depth of 650, and so I'll make that minus 350. So it's 300 deep. In fact, it's probably more than that, so it'd be minus 250. Or 200. Oops. So it's a 450 deep range hood. I think that's appropriate. And then let's add a different material to this. So I'm going to go material, again, create a parameter, and then we'll make a new material parameter. I'm just going to call this one range hood feature finish. And we'll make that like a different material. Okay, so that's done. Now, and I'm going to leave that sort of just in some sort of slate or some sort of marble or something like that. But of course, if I wanted to create more overhead cupboards, I could do that quite easily. I'll go back to my front view, and then I'm going to go create. And look, I've got no I'm not doing any maths here. I'm just drawing up on the fly. Just some shelving. I'll make that 40 mil. And then I'll copy it a few times. And then I will flip that over, mirroring it. Okay, and then it's the same thing. So go OK, go to my 3D. And then I can just use my line tool to the back of the range hood is the back of the shelving, and then the front of the range hood is the front of the shelving. So you end up with something that looks like this. And then we'll make sure we give these a different finish. So material, and I'll link the parameter. I'll just use the same casework finish, so it's that same brown. But you know, if you wanted to make that a unique finish, you could just make another parameter for that. Okay, so that looks good. Now we don't have a range hood yet, so I've got to go find one online. But for instance, this cooktop and the oven, I just got from the same resources that we've been using up until now. I think these were from bimobject.com or bimcontent.com. I can't remember now, but either or, they're very easy to find, and they've got good parameters. They're really detailed families. And we can change their materials later so they just look a little bit more aesthetically pleasing than this. Okay, so I'll just save this. Yeah, I'll paste my file. Load to project. Today's class. Override it. Nice, that looks good. Okay, and then this material here, I'll click on the family and let's change that range hood finish. Let's see how that looks with that stone. So it could be like the same stone as the benchtop. Yeah, I think that looks pretty cool. We can make that whatever we like though. Alright, so that looks relatively good. Now, let's just go to our floor plan. Now, in floor plan, you can see the joinery unit over the top of the sink. Of the cooktop. And so what we need to do is, this is where you can have a lot of control over visibility settings inside of your model, or inside the family. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back into that family and then I'm going to go to my 3D and then click on some of this geometry. So say these overhead, like the casework and whatnot. Firstly, what I'll do is I'm going to click on these and then click on these. And then we're going to click on this button up here in the modify panel called visibility settings. And this allows us to hide certain elements in certain views or in certain detail levels. So if we say plan RCP, I can untick that. And then also this one, cut in plan RCP if geometry permits or category permits. And I'm going to untick that too. So what that means, I go, okay. Whoops, I forgot to untick the other one. Okay, and then we'll load into project. And then you're not going to see those anymore over the top in plan view. See, that's hidden. But we do normally like to see a dash line where we have geometry like that. So I'll go back into my family. And then in plan view, you have this item called symbolic lines. And what symbolic lines allow you to do is put 2D lines in any view you want of a family. So under the annotate tab in the family editor, you've got this button here, it says symbolic line. I click on that and I'm going to click on hidden lines projection as my subcategory. Now I'm just going to use my offset, and we know that the depth of those overhead cases are 450. So I'll click on that, and then on this reference plane back here, I'm just going to draw a dash line across there like so. Now that dash line will only show in plan view. It won't show in any other view, which is helpful. But also means I don't have to do detail lines inside of my Revit model. I can do it all within the family. Now the other thing to note as well, which might be a little bit confusing, is that the carcasses are 600 mil deep or thereabouts. Yep. But the actual benchtop is a little bit more, it's 650. Now the reason for that is because I wanted to make my benchtop a little bit deeper. And so what I can do is I can make these carcasses a little bit deeper if I like. Or you could, in my case, I'm just going to leave them. It's not too much of a big deal. So I'll go back into here and let's see how that symbolic line looks. Okay, there it is there. Now you're seeing two lines over the top of each other. That's the overhead, as in like that's the floor above. But now we've got that. That looks good. Just gonna move the room name and the floor finish as well. Alright, and there's our kitchen coming together. Now you can see here in plan view, you've got this dash line. That is the that's the dishwasher door open, so it shows you how much room there is in front of that door. We can turn that off later on if we like as well. But we also want to see the dishwasher in plan view, so we're going to go back and edit our breakfast bench family too, using some symbolic lines. So far so good. What we'll do now is I'm going to create a small wall, which is just a tile finish. So I'm going to go to my wall command and let's build a new wall. So I'll go duplicate, and this will be, I think we're up to WT07 now. This will be a very thin wall. In fact, this will only be something like a 15 or 20 mil. It might even be less. So you have 6 mil for a tile plus 5 mil. So I'm going to make it very thin. Let's just say 12 mil. And it's going to be created by, generally we can make a 6 mil tile or an 8 mil tile. I think we'll go for, actually let's just double check. I'm going to find a supplier and then make sure I got the right sizes. Okay, so I've got a 10 mil wall tile and we'll do 10 mil grout. So 10 mil TIL / 10 mil concrete grout or screed or whatever you want to call it. So I'll just go CG concrete grout. Okay, and then edit. We're going to get rid of that. Structure. Core boundary. So the core boundary, this will be a I'm just going to get a concrete material. I don't really mind. So I'll take a concrete. And then the finish will be a tile. Now I can use the same tile as the floor as well if I wish. For a tile, we have our roof tile, or we've got our herringbone tile, or we can create a new one. And maybe we'll create a new one. So let's go in here, new material, rename, TIL 03. I think we're up to now, and this we'll call this splashback tile, and we'll make that a white finish with what sort of pattern? So a model pattern, and we might just use the standard brick pattern, see how that looks, or maybe a block, 255 by 450 block. I'll make sure that's a light grey so it doesn't look too harsh in elevation. Okay, so 10 mil tile plus a 10 mil screed. Okay. Now all we need to do is just draw this up. So we're just going to go from here to here. I'm purposely drawing away from the other wall because we need to do a few things. So firstly, I need to work out which side is which. So I'll go to my 3D, and that's the opposite. So flip that around. There's our splashback tile wall. Then I'll go back to the floor plan. I'm going to click on the wall, and I'm going to right click on this little blue grip here and say disallow join. And I'm going to do the same on the other side. Right click, disallow join. Now I can just use my align tool. So AL for align. There's my plasterboard. Click on the plasterboard, click on the screed. There we go. And then I can just drag this to one side of my casework and then the other side. And then in 3D, I can play around with its height. So the height will have to change. So height wise goes up to the ceiling level, which is fine, but it doesn't start at the ground floor. It will start at 900. It will start at the point of where where our benchtop ends essentially. So, okay. And then what I need to do is go back, or what I need to do is go around the other side and go hide. And I need to pick up these two families and make sure I've got them aligned to the right wall. So AL, the front of my tile wall to the back of my light switch, or sorry, my GPO, and the same thing again to the back of my PowerPoint. So you'll see now I've got my PowerPoint sitting on the front of my splashback tile. Now, setting out the tiles, we can edit the tile set out, and we'll do that briefly as well. So far, that's all good. I'm pretty happy with that. Bring everything else back. And our kitchen's starting to look pretty well developed. We can always change our finishes later on if we want to. The next step is to place the joinery drawings or the kitchen drawings on a sheet, and we're going to create like a joinery plan, or almost like a room layout sheet in a way. So I'm going to start off with my ground floor, my ground floor plan, and I'm going to use a another call out. So I'm going to go view, call out. Or you can use a plan region, one or the other, but I think call out's fine. Click on the rectangle. And what we're going to do is in the properties, instead of calling this a detail, I'm going to call this another floor plan. So it's calling out a floor plan within itself. So I'm going to start from about here and do something like this. And then what I'll do is I'll double click on that, and we now have our plan. Now you'll notice that it's going to look a little bit weird to begin with, and that's just because there's no view template associated. So it's in course mode, which is why like the sink, there's no detail around the sink. But if I change this to fine mode, you'll see that that detail reappears, and same with our wall structure as well. So we don't know, I'm not too sure what scale that we're going to make this just yet, but we'll continue to play with this sort of as we go along. So what we'll do is we're going to make some elevations as well. So I'm going to go elevation and then another elevation. And then you'll see when I move around, it's picking up these different areas of the kitchen. So let's just place one elevation, say just here for now. And then we can adjust how much that elevation is seen by clicking on the black head and then utilizing these grips. And you'll see what it's done is it's actually found, without us even seeing this edge of the wall, it's found that edge of the wall, and it's found this edge of the wall. So that's actually good to go. And then we can click on the body of the elevation, which is the circle, and then tick the other box on the opposite side. And now we get this elevation of the kitchen, that's totally fine as well. The only thing we may want to adjust is the depth. So we don't want to see all the way back to the wall of the lounge room. We want to bring that in just so we see just the kitchen bench itself. And we may even want to change its depth, so we only want to see the workbench, or so, like the breakfast bench in its entirety. So like this, we're going to then find our kitchen joinery sheet, and we'll see how much we can fit on here. Changing this into an A3, we may need to go across 2 sheets. So firstly, we're going to go down to detail views, and where are we? Sorry, floor plans. And under floor plans, you got ground floor call out 1. I'm just going to click and drag that down here. Okay, and you'll see there's a section marker just there. So that will go once we turn off section markers in this view template. So at the moment, remember, there's no view template associated. And if we use, if we wanted to apply our architectural floor plan view template, that won't quite work because it's at a different scale. So that's fine for now. These are all at a scale of 1 to 50, which I think is adequate. So I'm just going to drag this down here. And actually in this view, I'm just going to go VG, go to annotations, turn off sections, and go OK. All right, and then this title just here, I'm just going to drag this back. Okay. And I'll do something like that. Then we need these elevations. So under elevations, we've got elevation 1A and elevation 1C. So I'm just going to drag 1A. Okay, yep, that's fine. So double click, and what's happening at the moment is the elevation box is not that tall. So I just need to drag this elevation box up, and there's our elevated view of the kitchen, showing a lot of information that we don't need to see just yet, but that's okay. So that's also at 1 to 50, which is fine. And then elevation 1C, same thing again. Click and drag. It may look a little bit weird, but then click on the crop box and just drag that up. Okay. All right, so what we need to do is working on these elevations first. Let's clean up these drawings so they look like we want them to look like. So you'll see that I don't have any view template associated. So let's make the view look the way we want and then save it as a view template. So firstly, scale 1 to 50, that's fine. Detail level, make it fine, that's much better. No shadows, nothing like that, that's all good. Now go into VG for visibility graphics, and let's turn off reference planes and reference lines. Let's also turn off section markers and elevation markers if there are any. Then into modeling categories, I think actually everything we want to see in elevation is right in terms of model. So let's say okay, that cleans up the drawing quite a bit. Then next up, let's just crop this view back down just so it's just on the ceiling level. Okay, and that's just on the doorway, that's fine. And then that's fine. And then I'll drag this up. This looks something like that. And then with these elevations, I'm actually going to flick them around the other way so they look a bit cleaner. Now all of this is the same, you know, everything we've done up until this up until now in this project, it all follows the same attributes. So there's nothing really new that I'm doing currently that you haven't done before. It's just a matter of, you know, laying these out nicely on a sheet. Now that's created, I can go to here and we can, let's go view template. So under view template, and create a view template from this current view, and we'll call this one internal elevations. Okay, double click out, double click into the other view, go into view template and go internal elevations, click on, and there we go, nice and clean. Actually, let's just go into here as well because we need to actually apply that view template. Internal elevations, beautiful. So those two are now done. There's still a lot more sort of cleaning up to do and whatnot. And also this crop box we can hide by clicking on this little button down here to hide the crop box. All right, so this line you're seeing here, that's the wall next to us. So if I drag that up to the ceiling, or actually it's the door. So you could do something like that if you want as well. If you want to go up to the ceiling level, really 6 of one, half dozen the other. We've got to make sure we leave some room to dimension these up as well. So it's going to be pretty tight. Now in terms of setting out, doing a couple of adjustments here. So for instance, setting out some of the wall tiles. So I can use AL, align, and then I can use any marker around here. So if I can find the center of the cabinetry, I can then set out the tiles from there, or I can choose to set out from one corner. So I can click on this edge, click on that, and then you'll see it sets the tiles out from there. But I don't think that looks very good. So I'm just going to draw a detail line from the center of this cabinetry. Then go align here and there, and then we know that our tiles are set out from the center, or the splashback set out from the center of the cooktop, which looks much better. Okay. Then next up, we want to dimension some of these items as well. And actually, we also want to change the way some of this stuff looks. So these lines here, because we're at 1 to 50, it's pretty tight. But these cross lines here are meant to be all dashed. Now, they are a certain type of line which we can change inside of the view template. So I'm going to go back to my internal elevation. I'm going to go to override model categories, and then I'm going to find my casework, and then I'm going to click on this little drop down. And we're going to see in here elevation swing, and I think it was there. And let's just double check that we've got the right one. So I'm going to go override, And let's change the pattern to dash tight, and then change the color to a darker gray, not black. And let's just see if that works. Okay. Okay, so it has updated. So you'll see that now here. Those lines have updated accordingly, because you don't want them to be black, because it sort of just takes away from the drawing itself. We can make that even a lighter gray if we want, and we probably will. And then we've changed the line type to be a bit different, but you'll see that's also updated on the other drawings too, because we're using the same view template. That's the beauty of view templates. And also that's the importance of making sure we use the right subcategory inside of families. So it's really easy to change how items look. So I'm going to change this to a light gray. The line weight I'll make 1, which it is anyway. And then the dash, that's probably about as tight as a dash line as we can go. Dash 1.5 mil, I can try that. And go okay. Okay, that's better. Yep, looks much better. Alright, especially because we're going to have our line weights turned on. So from there, we can then just edit and put in some dimensions as well. So dimensioning is, what we've been doing up until now. So dimensioning these cabinets, hitting tab on my keyboard just to make sure I get the right sizes. Okay, so you can see how we'll work through this. So I'm just doing this quickly just to give you an idea of how these will sort of come up, but there's still a lot of work to do here. Now in terms of on this side of the workbench, we've got our dishwasher, we've got our cupboards, we've got our sinks underneath. There's a bit of work we can do in here in this model within the family. So there's always a fine line between what you detail sort of on your elevations and what you detail inside of your project. So if I go to this this breakfast bench and go edit family, there's a bit more we can do here. So first of all, I go to the floor view, floor plan, and I'm going to go annotation, symbolic line, and we're going to choose hidden lines projection. And I'm just going to do a rectangle, like so, and then just a dash line across, and that denotes where our dishwasher is. And you'll see if I load this back into our project, today's class, and override it, we won't see anything in the plan in the elevation. Okay, but we can see it in plan view. You can see that dash line now that denotes where the dishwasher is. The next one as well, actually another good one, is where the breakfast bench ends. So the under, I guess, where the where your feet would be, or where the kicker panel is behind. So that's easy. Again, another symbolic line, annotate symbolic line, hidden line, and I'm just going to trace over that. Okay. And if I turn this out of wireframe mode into hidden line, that gives you a bit more of a representation of what's happening there. Now the hidden lines, using that subcategory is important because these are all just black dash lines at the moment, but inside of our project I can change them to be like a grey dash line and a tighter dash if we prefer. Then in the elevation, okay, I'm going to hide these two doors just by going HH, and I want to see the underside of our sinks. So I'm just going to go back and use annotate symbolic line, hidden lines projection. I'm just going to draw one line. In fact, I'm just going to change the scale of the drawing as well from 1 to 20 to 1 to 10, just so I can see this a bit better. Okay, and I am just going to trace this. I'm using my pick lines tool to generate this. And it's going to be hard to see right now. Annotate, symbolic line. Draw a line between there and there. And then even here, I'm totally just eyeballing this. There's no, I can get much more finicky about this later on, but again, it's really just as symbolism. It doesn't need to be perfect. So I've just copied that from one side to the other. Something like that, I think is fine, and I'll make it meet under the benchtop. Now I'm just going to hide the sink itself. And go HH. So there's our dashed lines. And then what I'll do is I'll go back to my annotate symbolic line and then just fillet these two lines together. So it looks something like that. Then I'll bring everything back. It will look like this in elevation. So those lines will be there regardless. Okay, and then let's load that back into the project. And override. Okay, and now you'll see in the elevation, there is our dashed lines. Now we've got our elevation projection lines are shown as dashed, but these lines, these hidden lines, because they're under a different category, they're under the hidden line category, are still shown in black. So again, we can go into the internal elevations, go to override the model categories, go to our casework, find hidden line projection. There's our hidden lines, and then we can override them. So let's override them to be a light gray and override the pattern to be a dash tight. Go OK, and OK, and OK, and you'll see that's updated now to be a gray dashed line. And even more so when I go into my plan view, or actually not yet, because in the plan they're still set as, because there is no view template associated to this view just yet. So that's come in nice and neatly. Now the other way you can detail joinery is just by using detail lines in the view that you're looking at. And it's usually a bit of a mixture of both. So I'm going to go detail line. And then what I'm going to do is just choose a dash line. And it may or may not look that great, but I'm just going to choose hidden lines here. And I'm going to use, I'm going to turn off my line weights. And then I'm going to choose an offset of 18 mil. And then I'm going to trace around the outside of this point. Oops, I'll use a rectangle. I'll go from this point to this point and then hit spacebar. And what that gives us is what the carcass looks like behind the doors. And then I can just like draw in a shelf, for example, and then offset that 18 mil. And you got something that looks like this. So you can see the shelving behind the cabinet. And then when I turn back on my line weights, looks something like that. This is a really good time to remind you as well, it's important to print your drawings when you next get the chance, because I know at the moment these line weights look a little bit cooked. This is a very small elevation. These 1 to 50 elevations are not the biggest, but it will look a lot better once you print these out. I guarantee you, or even to PDF, that these lines don't actually end up being as chunky as that they appear just here. So I'm going to continue working on my internal elevations and detailing those up as required. The other thing as well is just adding text over the top, so and some detail components as well. So inside of some of these models, so give an example. So the GPO just here, we can draw a GPO and then place that over the top of where the real GPO is behind. So I can then say, what I'll do is I'm going to click on this GPO and go HI to isolate it. going to grab a detail line, and I'm just going to use my pen 1, and I'm just going to trace over this just roughly. Okay, click on those detail lines and then go detail group and just call this GPO. Alright, then I'll click on that and go edit group, and then I'm just going to go DL for detail line and then pick lines. And I'm just going to pick, hitting tab if I can't select the right line. And I'm just going to do one rectangle. And then take these, mirror it. Okay, so it looks something like this. And say okay. Now, it doesn't look like anything's really happened, but once I click on that detail family and move that across, then go HR, this will appear wherever I want. So now I know, for instance, I'm going to click on the kitchen joinery, HH, and then find these other GPOs. So I'm going to click on this detail GPO and make sure I just go multiple. I'm just going to go from here, hitting tab on my keyboard to just snap to there, and there's one behind the fridge as well. And I'm just going to move this to here. Now, you may not need to, oh sorry, when I bring that back, you'll see now the GPOs sit in front of all the other geometry. And then we just add in text. So I'm just going to use normal 1.8 text, and then just put GPO behind. Okay, and then I'll copy that again just here. Or I might want to, because these drawings are relatively small, we might want to annotate that. So instead, I can just use my leaders. For example, like so. But again, the full detailing of these will be up to your working drawings class. And so again, likewise with shelving, we're all a carcass. We don't have our carcass or shelving behind here. We've chosen to do that in this instance by using detail lines. So again, you can choose to do one way or another. It doesn't really matter. But then again, just detailing text over the top is relatively easy. You know, dishwasher. You can draw a bin if you prefer. So if I go back to my hidden lines and do something like this, and then just grab a multi-leader and go something like that, and that's just using detail lines, but that's fine. Or you could go into that family and detail that up. I can actually draw that in as well. It's entirely up to you, or what your working drawings teacher wants you to do. Now, the floor plan, same deal. There's a bit of editing to do there. So the best way to do this, in my opinion, is to just model this up the way you want, or to use your visibility graphics to change things as you want. So again, casework, go to my hidden lines, change that to a tight dash line, change the color to just a light gray. Okay, and you'll see those have now updated. Detail everything up the way you want to, so DW and everything else like that. Dimension everything up within the plan view. And then when you're happy with that, I would then go view template, create view template from the current view, and this would just be called joinery plan, or maybe you go plan underscore joinery. Okay, yep, that's fine. And then apply that view template, plan joinery, apply that to the current view, and then we can edit it as we go along. And you'll see even our elevation markers are there now. Okay, so that looks all pretty good. Now the last one I want to show you is axonometric, and how to put a 3D view on this drawing sheet. So I might just bring these across. And I'll bring that across as well for now. And then what we'll do is we'll go back to our 3D view. Notice that we haven't updated the names of these either. We need to, we do need to rename these. I'll go to my 3D view. Okay, and we're going to do something like this. And then I'm going to do something like that. And I'm just using a section box. I don't like that. I'll go back to there. And I'll bring this. Okay, something like this. And then I'll bring this back as well. Alright, now what we can do from here is if I go to my 3D views in the project browser, I can see that the one that's bold is the view I'm currently in. So I can right click on this and call it duplicate view and duplicate with detail. And then we're just going to call this right click and we'll call this kitchen, all in caps, AXO. Alright, and then what we're going to do is once I'm happy with that angle, something like that I think is fine. I'm then going to lock this view. So this little dog house with a little padlock, I'm going to click on that and say save orientation and lock view. So now I can't rotate. You'll notice I can't orbit. I can zoom in and out, I can pan, but I can't change my angle, which is fine. And then what I'm going to do is go down to my sheet, so kitchen joinery. I'm going to find that AXO, that kitchen AXO in the project browser and drag it across. Now it's going to be huge to begin with because that's a big drawing. So what I can do is double click into that AXO, change the scale. So let's change it to say 1 to 200, too small. 1 to 100. Yep, I reckon 1 to 50. Okay, and then I'm just going to adjust the size of this. And drag this across. And you'll see now why it's so important to make sure you've got plenty of real estate on your sheet. But just like any other view, we can now give this a view template or we can edit the view. So double clicking into this view, I'm going to go VV on my keyboard. And let's hide a few things. So first of all, in the annotations, let's hide the levels so we don't see those. Whoops. And also, let's hide the section box. So I'll go section boxes, untick that, and there we go. That all hides. That looks much cleaner. And then it's just a matter of me cleaning up the drawing names and whatnot. You can also see this blue line. You might see that through, and that's remember that's our room separation line. But for now, I think that's okay. What we can do as well, I'll double click into here and let's just make this look a little bit more visually pleasant. So I'm going to click on the display styles. I'm going to graphic display settings, and I'm just going to turn on shadows, and I'm going to turn on show ambient shadows. It's going to look something like that, which looks good. Do I want to see the edges? Yeah, I do. Yeah, I need to see the edges. Yep, that's fine. And then go OK, and we have something that looks like this, and that's going to print really well. So what I can do is you could make another one, but I think that is totally fine from now. That looks pretty good. And then so we just need to add whatever other elevations we need. We may need one on the back of this bench and put that over here. And that is pretty much it for our kitchen joinery. We will continue detailing and modeling this up as the classes go along. Like I said, there'll be much more to add with your working drawings classes, like details and annotations. You may need to put a few details down here. We may need to schedule a few things like the materials that we're using on here. It doesn't really matter. We can go one way or another. The other thing quickly to remember is the tagging of materials. So we haven't done this yet, but this is a great time to introduce that concept to you. So say with these materials, what we can do is I click on this kitchen bench and I go edit type, and then I'm going to go to say the range hood finish. So the range hood finish at the moment is this STN02 stone range hood. Under identity, okay, in the tab on the right hand side, I'm going to go to mark and type in STN02. All right, and that's it. And I'll go OK. and then OK. So nothing is really happened yet, but what we are going to do now is I'm going to go up to my Annotate tab, and then I'm going to come across about 3/4 of the way across under tags. I'm going to click on Material Tag. We haven't material tagged before. Now, there are many different ways you can material tag, and the reason why the question mark is there is I'll describe that in a second. So I'm going to turn off the leader in the green ribbon, in the green options bar, and then just click just here. Now, the reason why that's giving me a question mark is because it's obviously looking for a different piece of information other than the material mark. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to click on the question mark, and I'm going to go Edit Family. Now we're going to open up the tag, the material tag, and you can see straight away it's asking for the material description. We want this to be the material mark. So I'm going to click on here and then go Edit Label, and I'm going to change this in here. So the moment you see it wants the description, I'm going to click on the number 1 and then click on the red arrow. I'm going to click on the mark on the left hand side and then click the green arrow, and now that comes in. I'll click OK. Looks like nothing has fundamentally changed, but we do also want to change the size of this text. So I'm going to go Edit Type, change the text type. So I'm going to go rename 1.8 millimeter and change the size of the text to be 1.8 millimeter. Okay, say OK, and then load into project and close. I don't even care about saving this because there's no need. No, and then overwrite. Yes, thank you. And you'll see now ST02 comes up there for the finish, and that same tag we can use everywhere else. So I'm going to go back to my Annotate tab, Material tag, and you'll see there's currently nothing on the splashback, so I can just click there, and nothing on the finish of the vinyl. And in fact, I might use a leader for this. So I'm going to click on leader, and I'm just going to go click once, drag this out to here, drag it again, and there's still question marks, so I can go both ways. So I know that this is tile 3, so I can click on the question mark and go TIL03, hit enter, and now that's updated. And for this one here, which is our timber vinyl finish, I can go Edit Type, go to our vinyl timber finish, go to the identity tag and type in the code, which is VYN01. Okay, okay. Oops. Oh, I know. Yep. Vinyl timber. VYN01. Okay. And okay. There we go. So now that's updated. And if I want to just change how this material tag, how this leader looks, I I click on the tag itself and then go Edit Type, and then just change the arrowhead to be 15 degree thick arrow. And you'll see that's now updated. So I can continue to do this basically anywhere else on my drawing, anywhere where I have a material finish now. So if I go back to this side, to the timber, to the breakfast bench, and I go to my material tag, you'll see that it picks it up as I hover over it. The Benchtop does not currently have a finish, but these do, so I can go like so. The kicker doesn't have a finish yet. The stone, I can even just give that a finish, so I can go something like this. And I know that's ST01, so I go STN01. Okay, and now that's updated. All right, and so on and so forth. Even in the in the plan view, if I go and tag this material tag, and I'll turn off the leader, as soon as I hover over that Benchtop, it knows that that finish is stone. Also, that one is stone, and it knows it because it's the same material as before. And if I hover over, say, the vinyl timber finish, you'll see that picks it up there. So that is how you tag finishes inside of Revit, or tag materials, that is. So it's not tagging floor types or wall types, because wall types are made up of a number of materials and a number of items. The material tag is picking up on just the item that we've finished a surface with, or an element with more broadly.